What's going on, buddy? My name is Eason. Welcome back to another video. And today, we're gonna be getting into agriculture. We're starting our agriculture unit and agriculture section, chapter, whatever you want to call it. So we're gonna be getting into not just the geography of agriculture, but kind of the economics of geography. Not economics geography, the economics of agriculture, the effects of agriculture, how it creates centripetal, centrifugal forces, and everything to do with agriculture. This is a pretty long unit at the time we're recording this, and there's so much in this video that we need to go over, so buckle up. It's gonna be a hefty ride. Let's get started though. So plant survival, of course, to make crops and plants, you must know how they grow and live and what they need. And plants need four basic things. The first one is a suitable temperature. Not the temperature for every plant is going to be the same. It's going to be different, varying from plant to plant. Some plants grow better in the winter, some plants grow better in the summer, some plants grow better in the fall and spring where there's those moderate temperatures. But a plant must have a suitable temperature to be grown. It also needs space to grow. If plants are bunked up together, they may die because there's no space for them to grow. If there's too much space, I mean, too much space is actually a bad thing. But too much space can make a plant look big, like get bigger than it can be. Sometimes space will limit the growth to the point where there's no growth at all. So make sure there's a good amount of space for that plant to grow. And if you don't want your plant to take over your whole entire backyard, garden, or farm, put some plants around it as well. Then water and nutrients. So plants are living organisms. They need water to survive. They also need nutrients. They need to conduct photosynthesis to make their own food. They are autotrophs. You learned this in biology class. So yeah, they need water and nutrients to survive just like humans do and every other animal. Deer, sharks, all the other animals that you can think of. And of course, they need light to grow, to make photosynthesis, and of course to grow. So mostly photosynthesis. So sunlight goes into the plants. Blah 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 blah. I don't know the full specifics, and then they make photosynthesis, which creates nutrients, which makes them grow. Now, light also can give them suitable temperature. So if they're inside your house, sunlight can make the temperature warmer and allow them to conduct photosynthesis. Now, humans can aid and influence plant growth. So think about each four of these, and maybe write down kind of like an FRQ. How can human aid and influence plant growth? All right, let's go through these one by one, starting with temperature. So humans could, if a plant is inside or in a greenhouse or whatever, they can change the temperature of that room or building that the plant is in to let it grow. Space, humans can make a potted plant, so give it a certain amount of space for the roots to grow in, for the plants to grow in. You could also grow the plant wherever it wants. So plant the seed wherever they want to grow. Give it enough space to grow around. Give it tons of room for its leaves. I know if you have like pumpkins, they have a lot of leaves. So yeah, space. Then we got water and nutrients. They could get, one of those like water buckets or canteen thingies. And then, pour it on their plant in case it's inside or you get in a dry area like with droughts or no rain. And of course, nutrients. Water will let it grow nutrients through photosynthesis, and light will help that as well. They could put a lamp, a heat lamp. They could put it by a window. If they don't want the plant to be outside, they could put it by a window for whatever reason, for it to get lights and for that to create nutrients. So there's some ways humans can aid and influence plant growth. Now there's also some modifications with humans aiding and influencing plant growth. And some of these are greenhouses, so they can make, greenhouses, I guess. They can put a bunch of plants together, be warm, got nice light, got nice temperature, blah, 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 blah. Fertilizers, they can give a fertilizer that can 100% make that plant grow, so they have a high chance of it growing. GMOs, genetically modified organisms. These could eat the plants, or they can be in the plants and make them grow, make them be bigger than if we didn't have those GMOs. Artificial lights. So if your plant's in a dark room or a room that doesn't get enough sunlight, they can put heat lamps or other artificial lights in there to give it light. And then we got irrigation and clearing land. So we saw this definitely with the creation of civilizations in history. So irrigation to allow water to get to these plants. So moving things around in natural environments. And then we got clearing land. So these people are basically just going to be, clearing land around. Uh, cultivating. I had a yawn there for a second. This does not bore me, I swear. But cultivating land, clearing it, allowing the plants to grow with no other plants in there, weeds and stuff that could kill it. And then, of course, a mechanization. I am not good at pronouncing things. So things like tractors that'll cut the plants in agriculture, or other things that'll give it fertilizer, water, basically, not electronics, but, mechanisms, that reduce the cost of labor and, of course, have less labor. So those are some modifications of plants and stuff. Now let's get into agriculture, which you've kind of been learning about already. But agricultural practices are influenced by the physical environment and climatic conditions. As we can see here, the physical environment. This person has like a lake or river or whatever this is here. Actually, let's go back to that laser pointer. So we can see here, he doesn't have to put water and stuff around his crops since they're close to the water, and the water, of course, will get to those crops sooner or later. It'll allow to get nutrients and water and to let them grow. He's also giving them space as well, so that's human influence. And then climatic conditions. We can see here that he's wearing jeans and a short sleeve shirt, so it's definitely not cold outside. So he's at a suitable temperature where it's not freezing the plants to death. Now he's not sweating either, and it doesn't look like it's that hot either. I mean the water seems to be pretty high actually. We can see there's some plants that are going into that water right there, so it might be like high tide or something, or just a big influx of water in that uh water boundary. So it's definitely, not cold, but definitely not too hot, but there's just enough water and just enough light for the plants to grow. So we get to see this judged off this one image. And this guy planted them for this reason, so he'll know his plants will grow because of the climatic and environmental conditions. Now let's get into the physical environment and how it influences agriculture. So let's get into climate a little bit. Climate regions and blah 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 stuff that you need to know for the AP exam. Uh, so we have tropical, dry, mid latitude, high latitude, and our highlands. So look at your tropical areas. This is gonna be your red and dark orange areas. We can see here in South America, we can see in Brazil, we have our tropical areas. Central Africa is pretty tropical. Indonesia is pretty tropical. Southern India is pretty tropical. The Philippines are tropical. So we got some tropical areas around here. We kind of see them that they're in the same little region by the equator. And things that are kind of below or above our tropical regions are going to be subtropical. And our subtropical is going to be dark green. So we see here at kind of this part of southern Brazil and northern Argentina, below that tropical area is subtropical areas. Above the tropical areas in Asia and China, and that eastern area of China and Japan is subtropical. And then we can see in the southeastern United States is a subtropical region as well. So they're either above or below those tropical regions. It's colder, essentially. Now let's get into our dry areas, which is kind of a peach and I guess yellowish orange color. So we can see this in our Africa, Middle East, North Africa, Middle East, a little bit of that Western United States in that Mojave Desert. So that we see this in Australia. Australia is known to be pretty dry. And then we could see this in a little bit of Central Asia as well. So we have our dry areas that maybe get into ranching, which we'll talk about in just a second, and that aren't really suitable for growing crops. Then we got our Mediterranean areas, which is basically areas kind of like by water, especially that Mediterranean Sea. So we see that in Italy, Western Turkey, some Portugal, Northern Africa, and kind of the rest of Southern Europe as well. We can see a lot of Mediterranean climates around there. And we're going to get into the specifics of what crops are grown here in just a second. Then we got our high latitudes, or our subarctic. These are also going to be called mid-cold latitudes. But this is called subarctic for the AP Human Geography. I mean, no, not for the AP Human Geography. This map, it's called subarctic. So remember, mid cold latitude, subarctic, and that's gonna be our purplish, blue areas. So Canada, Alaska, ton of Russia. Those are our subarctic or mid-cold latitudes. And then we have our mid-warm latitudes, which is kind of like tundra or humid continental on this map. So that's cyan blue colors. We see cyan. Cyan. So our human continental on this map, and then that's gonna be our mid-warm latitude. So we can see that kind of the rest of the United States on the middle and the eastern. We see this with a bunch of Eastern Europe and Western Russia, Eastern Asia. Actually, we can kind of see this on Eastern Australia and Southern Chile and Argentina and South America. So we can see different climate regions around the world using this map. Pretty cool. Now let's get into the kind of the crops that are grown in these different areas, and I'll be referencing this map and the countries where these crops are grown. If you want to take notes or get a little better education on it. So artificial products. Okay. So let's start with tropical products. I know there's a lot on the screen. I probably should have put stuff here and animated it, but it's whatever. So tropical crops, we say sugar, yams, cacao, coffee, and tea. So a lot of things here, kind of like 3 or 4 of these, are used to make drinks, especially coffee, tea, and sugar. And of course, yams. And these are going to be in our tropical regions. So remember, Brazil, Indonesia, Eastern China, Southern India. Those are our tropical regions. Don't forget Central Asia, not Asia, Africa, Central Africa as well. So we can see those are there in tropical. And then the subtropical, think Eastern China, Southeastern United States, Southern Brazil, Northern Argentina. Those are our subtropical areas. We have rice, cotton, soybeans, and tobacco. So these are different from our tropical crops. Cool. Then we got dry / Mediterranean. These are kind of grown in the same things. We got olives, peppers, grapes, citrus fruits, so stuff like grapefruits, lemons, oranges. Those are our citrus fruits. And you can kind of see a similarity between these. I mean, peppers are fruits, grapes are fruits, citrus fruits are fruits. Olives are, I believe, vegetables or fruits. I mean, it's one of the two. And those are pretty similar as well. Now, the thing about this top row is that areas with these types of climates grow these types of crops because they can only be grown in these regions. It's very hard. It's not hard, but you don't make much money or profit. You can't make big agricultural practices using these crops that are grown in these tropical, subtropical, or dry climates. Now, unlike our warm mid-latitude, cold mid-latitude, in our grasslands or highlands, these crops are easily replicated in controlled environments by humans. Now, these crops in our warm mid-latitude is rice, a bunch of fruits, too many to list, and livestock. And I'm going to get into the difference between cattle, livestock, in, I think, the next slide. And then we have cold mid-latitudes. Remember those cold regions, Canada, Russia, Alaska. We'll be growing a bunch of wheat here, dairy, livestock, and grains, particularly barley. So we're not growing livestock either. I hope not. But wheat, dairy farms where they prioritize. Gosh, I can't speak. In dairy, there's primarily dairy there, so not eggs. So milk, cheese, ice cream. I know there's like ice cream machines you'll use on farms. But we'll see those in our cold mid latitudes. And then we have our grasslands and highlands. And I didn't really talk about this much actually in the last slide. Forgive me for that. Let's go back to the slide for that. So our grasslands and highlands, we could see here on Western South America. We could see this in Western of the United States. Central Asia below those dry areas as well. I dropped my flash drive. I'll get in it just a second. But in these grasslands and highlands, we don't see a lot of farming. We could see a lot of ranching here with cattle and livestock. I said it was dry as well. We'll see ranching with dry, and wondering what ranching is. We'll get into that in just a second. But grassland and highlands, we'll see a lot of animal work here. Cattle, livestock, they be slaughtering those animals for meat, getting products like wool or milk as well. So yeah. We already went through that. Now let's get into the difference between cattle and livestock. So cattle is basically your domestic animals. So like bull is cattle. And we have livestock, which is usually used for means for profit. So these could be, like sheep. You can get wool through sheep. Um, Other animals that you could kill. You could kill sheep for, or you could kill lamb for lamb. But you can use those to sell stuff, trade. You're using these for profit. Cattle, you're not necessarily using for profit. They're domesticated. Blah 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 blah. I have 3 examples of animals down here. We have the pig, the bull, and the cow. Are these cattle or livestock? Well, the pig is a livestock. You're gonna be using pig for, bacon, pork chop, pulled pork, other meat. So we'll see that with pig. Bull is cattle. You don't really kill bull. You don't go to a restaurant like, I want the bull. No, you're gonna see bull doing maybe some agricultural work, and they're doing other different animals. They're scaring away people from your farm. And then the cow, trick questioning, is livestock, and it can be used for cattle as well. It can be used for the same purpose as the bull, or it can be used as livestock. You use it for milk or beef, steak. That's good as well. So it's a big mix of livestock and cattle. All right, multiple choice question practice. You won't see this much on your scale check. That's why I'm giving you a multiple choice question practice. Which of the following products is most likely grown in climate similar to the majority of Australia? The correct answer is C, limes. So in our dry areas of Australia, we grow a lot of we don't I don't live there. They grow a lot of citrus fruits, and lime is a citrus fruit. Wheat is primarily grown in those cold mid-latitude climates. Sugar is in our tropics. Soybean is in our warm mid-latitudes, and zucchini, we'll see those in our mid-latitudes as well. And the only one here that's really dry is lime, which is a citrus fruit. Now, of course, different parts of Australia, particularly around the coast and like New South Wales and Victoria, is going to have some tropical, subtropical, more mid-latitude stuff as well. All right, let's get into farming. So farming is categorized into categories. Pretty simple. There's subsistence and commercial farming, and intensive and extensive farming. And basically, these are opposites of each other. So intensive and extensive are opposites, and subsistence and commercial are opposites. And you probably have an idea of what commercial farming is, and if it's an opposite of subsistence, you're gonna think, okay, it's the opposite of commercial. We'll get into that to make sure you know the true stuff. So, subsistence farming, there's crops grown for family use or smaller groups of people. We see smaller farm sizes to feed those smaller groups of people. There's more manual labor because we have smaller finance requirements. You can't pay as much for mechanisms or other people to do the labor for you because you're in kind of a less developed country. They don't have money lying around. And this is going to result in a less surplus and a profit because you're not making much money from that high manual labor. So you're going to use the crops you have grown to feed your family or, tribe or groups of people as well. And since you aren't making money, you can't go out and buy agrochemicals or create them as well. And your agrochemicals is going to be stuff like steroids that make your food bigger. If you go to like a grocery store like Walmart or Publix and you see blueberries or strawberries that are ginormous, yeah, that's because of the use of agrochemicals. And yeah, agrochemicals. And of course, we'll see this in our less developed countries. And this all kind of ties around. Smaller finance requirements requires more manual labor, which requires smaller farm size to reduce that labor, which results in less amount of crops, which will result in less surplus and profit. And of course, you got to feed your family. So you're going to be seeing those crops go to family use or a small group of people. Then we got commercial farming, which is the opposite of subsistence farming. So crops are grown for sale and profit. We're going to see larger farm sizes to maximize that amount of profit. We're going to see mechanized materials that can work on that larger farm. We're going to see higher finance requirements because you're in that MDC. People are going to be paying more money for those crops. I mean, you're selling more of the stuff because people will buy it. And of course, you're going to see that higher surplus and profit because you're going to have more crops because you have larger farm sizes due to be able to afford it from your higher finance requirements from you living in an MDC. And you can have those crops because you have mechanized equipment. So you're going to get a higher surplus and a profit, not from just feeding your family. And of course, we're going to see a higher use of agrochemicals. If you're selling things by the pound and you make things bigger with agrochemicals like steroids, you're going to be making a lot more profit from there than you would if you didn't use agrochemicals like majority of LDCs use. So as you can see, all ties around there. So think commercial farming, think bigger money commercial farming. Now let's get into intensive farming. So these are smaller scale practices with high amounts of labor, yield, and closer to higher population. So you're going to be closer to those urban areas or those higher populated, clustered, rural areas as well. And yields kind of just, like products and money. And there's 3 different types of intensive farming practices I want to go over: market gardening, plantation agriculture, and mixed crop livestock systems. We're starting with market gardening, which is the production of a diversity of flowers, fruits, and/or vegetables. Crops are transported to markets and the consumers, and these are usually taken up by migrant laborers and immigrants, so people moving around or immigrants. So if you go to, like those farmers markets or stores or booths in southwestern United States where the border is, you'll see a lot of immigrants selling things like flowers, fruits, and vegetables that they've grown themselves for a living to make a profit. And they're transporting these to the consumers or the markets. If you go on a farm, you might see a lot of, I don't want to try to be racist, but immigrant workers as well. They're not workers; they might be owners of the farm, family who own the farm as well. So they're gonna be taking up things to make a living, and they're gonna be transferring things through like cars or themselves to the consumers. They could be going up to someone and be like, "Hey, you want to buy these flowers?" It just depends. But like that greenhouse you've seen Frosty the Snowman where Frosty melts and Karen starts crying. There's a bunch of flowers in there. I guarantee those flowers were going to be sold somewhere for a profit. That's an example of market gardening. Now let's get into plantation agriculture. And I put that LDC there because you're going to primarily see these in our LDC countries. Market gardening, you'll see kind of in a mix of LDC and MDCs. Now, plantation agriculture is labor-intensive farming used to grow one crop and exploit low-costing labor. Plantations were where products like cotton and sugarcane were used by slaves in colonial America, especially in that South in, Georgia, the Carolinas, and Virginia. They were very labor intensive. They had slaves, tons of slaves for labor, huge plantations for cotton and sugarcane. And usually these plantations had one crop, like cotton or sugarcane. And so since they had low costing labor, they could exploit it, have as much crops as they want to make a ton of money and maybe get more slaves and more land for higher plantations, and it just builds up and up. Now, other products grown now and then through plantation agriculture, we still grow cotton and sugarcane through plantation agriculture, just through different ways. But other products grown is coffee, cashews, and banana. Yes, coffee, cashews, and banana. We'll see these through plantation agricultures. I've never seen a banana plantation. I kind of want to see one now. And then we got mixed crop and livestock, which is going to be in our more developed countries more than our LDCs. And this is the use of crops and animals of the same farm. Crops can be grown by animal exploits. So maybe the animals are doing work like walking around, putting fertilizer on the ground or water. And these animals are exploiting, the owner is exploiting the animal to grow these crops for their own profit. Once the animals are done, they'll like kill it for food and stuff. Or crops are grown to exploit animals for meat, dairy products, wool, etc. I spelled dairy wrong. This is very embarrassing because I never spelled dairy wrong. But they can be feeding these animals to get the best meat for wool to grow faster, for dairy products, keep them hydrated, get more milk and stuff from them. So yeah, mixed crop and livestock. So you're going to be having them on the same farm, and one of them, either the crops or the animals, are going to be exploited. Then we got extensive farming, which is the opposite of intensive farming. These are going to be higher scale practices. Remember, our intensive farming is our lower scale practices, and those are close to our urban and high populated areas. Extensive farming is in remote areas, so rural areas. They're going to have lower amounts of labor and low yield. And then the 3 practices we're going to be going if shifting, cultivation, nomadic herding, and ranching. I'll finally get to talk about ranching. So shifting cultivation, which you'll probably see in LDCs more than MDCs, is the practice of clearing and cultivating certain parts of a farm at different times. Since soil loses fertility as it ages, like humans lose memory as they age, this process is started every few years. So they keep doing it over and over again. So it's basically a loop. And then they're particularly popular in tropical climates. Remember that. Put that in your head somewhere. So they're clearing out the land. They could be burning it. If you see a bunch of pictures of it, you'll see fires. And there's going to be different parts of land or their territory. I don't know if they're using other territory as well. But to farm. And then every couple of years, they'll let that fertility kind of like regrow, get its fertility back, and then they'll go somewhere else in that land or their farm and whatever. And then they'll go back to that as that new area loses its fertility as it ages, and then it'll let it, get its fertility back. And it's just a big loop process. Then we got nomadic herding, which is in our LDCs, which is the practice of a herder moving cattle and livestock to fresh climates. And this is usually in no specific pattern, so they're not going by the seasons, like that one word. Hopefully you remember it. I don't remember how to pronounce it. You can see here we have our herder in our LDC moving the cattle and livestock to fresh climates. Maybe there's no water where they just were, so they're going to a new area for water to let their cattle and livestock grow, and maybe they'll kill the livestock later. I don't really know the specifics. It's a thing on a case scenario. But yeah, that's nomadic herding. Then we got ranching, which is in our more developed countries, which is the use of breeding and grazing cattle and livestock to sell due to land not be suited for farming. As you can see in this image here on the screen, we don't see much farming here. We see cattle and livestock. We see cows, but we don't see much farming. They're going to be breeding and grazing these cattle to sell them. So they could be selling their milk. They could be selling their meat. If it was sheep, we'd be seeing wool. Goats, we could see milk. For lamb, we could see, people killing them for their meat. Pig, mix of things as well. So ranching is really based on those animals, not necessarily the crops anymore. Alright, and that's the end of this complex video. There's a little complex FRQ on the screen. Don't worry, it won't take it that long. Try to complete it in under 30 minutes. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos where I teach a bunch of stuff about AP Human Geography. You can change your mind if you don't want to subscribe later. Join my Discord server if you want to teach someone something or learn something new yourself. Like the video, it helps me out. Leave a comment appreciating my effort into this video. And, giving me criticism. I love criticism. Other than that, I'm going to have my playlist on the card above the video if you guys want to watch the 5.2 video of this unit. Yeah, other than that, see you soon.